Hello and welcome to this video where we look on the keywords break and continue. And I mentioned in the last video about while loops that these are keywords to prematurely stop a loop, no matter if it's a for loop or a while loop, but usually they make a little bit more sense in while loops because we don't know how often we iterate. Sometimes we want to exit a bit earlier. And these two keywords, they can exit the whole loop, that would be break, or they can stop the current iteration and go back to the while loop entry condition, that would be continue. So again, these while true loops, they are infinity loops and they are looping forever, and we need to avoid that. So let's have an example of such an infinity loop. So we are writing the following. There is a variable I equals 0, and while true, like forever, we are printing this I, that would be infinitely often printing I, then adding +1 to I in every iteration, and luckily we have a exit condition when I is greater than 2, because there's a break, and when there's a break we are exiting the while loop no matter what. So this is the same as this construction. Of course the right hand side makes more sense. So we don't need a break and an if condition in that while loop here, but this is just an example for didactic reasons. I just want to show you a simple example that you can easily understand in short time. So on the right hand side we have the same condition, but now in the while loop entry condition. And again, note that break also works in for loops like continue that we are going to cover in the following. So let's look at a different example here. We have again a while true loop. So this is a infinity loop and we are going to start with an index of 0. We are incrementing, like adding 1 in every iteration of that loop. And if ix is greater than 3, we are breaking with the while loop and we are exiting it. But if ix modulo 2 is equal to 0, in other words, if ix is an even number or 0, then we are going to continue. And what happens when you continue, you are going back to the entry condition. And in this case, we are simply not printing it. Yeah, because printing is only being executed in the last line when there was no continue before. So let's have a more extensively example on this. So we are going through that in this way of having this triangle and the iterator and the interpreter looking at the lines row by row. So this is our interpreter. The triangle is here in the first row. At this point in time, ix is 0. So maybe you can pause the video for a second and just guess what the output here will be. Yeah, so I already explained it a little bit, but maybe you can just think about it, think this through what the output is, and then we are going through this example step by step. So the while true loop is always true. It's always going to enter that while loop. Then we have ix +1, that is at this point in time, then ix equals 1. Then we have if ix is greater than 3, we are going to break, but this is not the case. This is only the case if ix is 4. Then we are skipping the break. We are going to the next if condition. If ix modulo 2 is 0, and this is also not the case. So we are going to print command and we are printing that the ix is 1. Going back to the while true condition, it's of course always still true. Then we are adding +1 to ix. We're having 2 now. The if ix greater 3 condition is not true. But the modulo 2 now is true. So what happens here? We are going to execute the body of that if condition, continue, and then we are going back to the while true. We are not executing the print function. Again, continue is prematurely stopping the current iteration of a loop. Then we're adding ix3. This is not true, this is not true, so we are printing the ix3, and in the next run we are adding 4, and what happens now? We have ix greater 3 fulfilled. We are breaking with the loop, and this is actually exiting the while loop. So let's have a look at the Jupyter Notebook for an example. So we are going to use a list here with some random numbers. And then we use a for loop now. And we say that if we are going to have a number that equals 0, if the element that we are iterating in that for loop is equal to 9, then continue, and otherwise we are going to print it, just to see that you actually are printing all the numbers but not the 9. Let's have another condition here. We can also use a elif here. If element equals 18, then break. So this can also be done, and as you can see, when we reach the 18, we break it and we don't even print this last iteration here anymore. And this is just an example that we can also work with for loops when using break and continue. So in the next video, we will have finally a look on functions that is very useful to make your code structured, or to also reuse part of your code over and over again. So stay tuned.